My name is Karen Myers. I am 32 years old. 2 weeks ago, my own mother stood in a packed courtroom, held up a photo of me in my faded cafe apron, and called me just a waitress. The judge glanced at it. The gallery laughed. Her attorney smirked like the case was already won. What none of them knew, what my mother never bothered to learn in 20 years, was that I had been waiting for that exact moment for months, not out of blind rage, but because I knew exactly who she was, and I had prepared for every lie she would tell. This is the story of how my mother tried to steal my grandfather's $11 million estate, and how the quietest person in the room finally stood up. Welcome to Calm Drama Stories. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most, if family greed ever left you feeling small, powerless, or invisible, this one is going to hit you right in the chest. Stick around until the end. For the moment the courtroom went dead silent, like, subscribe, and drop your own family betrayal story in the comments. Let's begin. My grandfather, Walter Myers, was a Vietnam veteran. He came home in 1971 with a Purple Heart and $37 in his pocket. No fanfare, no trust fund, just calloused hands and an unbreakable spine. By 50, he owned 6 rental properties and a small commercial building on Route 9. By 70, his portfolio sat at $11 million. He never bragged about the money. He talked about discipline, about keeping your word, about being the kind of person others could count on even when the world wasn't watching. I grew up 2 blocks from his modest brick house in a quiet Virginia town. My mother, Diane, left when I was 12. One morning I came home from school and her suitcase was gone. She drove off with her boyfriend in a black SUV toward Richmond, chasing a faster life. She promised to call every week. She called twice the first month, once the next. Then the number changed. No forwarding address, no goodbye. Grandpa never spoke badly about her. He kept her photo on the shelf next to his cedar box, the one that smelled like fresh cut wood and childhood safety. Every Thanksgiving, he mailed her an invitation. She showed up once in 2010, stayed 45 minutes glued to her phone, and left before pie. That cedar box became my sanctuary. Grandpa taught me to change a tire, read a bank statement, and shake hands like I meant it. When bullies at school mocked me for not having a mom at parent-teacher nights, he'd say the same thing. The quietest person in the room is usually the one who knows the most. I didn't fully understand it then. I do now. 2 years before he passed, Grandpa got sick. I requested a permanent change of station and moved home. I took a job at Frank's Cafe so I could walk over on lunch breaks and sit with him. That waitress job, and the one my mother later weaponized, was my way of staying close to the only parent who never left. He died on a Tuesday in January. I held his hand. The room smelled of antiseptic and cedar. I'd brought the wooden box and set it on the nightstand. His last words to me, "You're going to be fine. You've always been the strong one." The funeral was small and real. 41 people signed the guest book. My mother was not one of them. 3 weeks later, at the will reading, everything changed. Grandpa left me as executor and primary beneficiary, the properties, investments, accounts, everything totaling $11 million. To my mother, a lump sum of $200,000 with a single attached note. I love my daughter, but love does not mean trust. That night, alone in his study, I opened the cedar box. Beneath a copy of the will was a handwritten letter, his shaky penmanship still clear. "Karen, if your mother comes back, and she will, it won't be for me. It will be for the money. I chose you because you stayed. Protect what I built." I cried for the first time since the funeral. Then I dried my eyes and started planning, because I knew she was coming. 6 days later, my phone rang. "Mom, sweetheart, we need to talk about Daddy's wishes. I think there's been a terrible mistake." She arrived the following week with her third husband, Richard Hale, the first man in her life sharp enough to smell real money. They wanted to meet at Frank's Cafe. I agreed. I wanted them on my turf. Diane walked in wearing an expensive cashmere coat and boots that cost more than Frank's rent. She hugged me like we'd seen each other last week. "Oh, sweetheart, you look thin. Are you eating enough?" Richard shook my hand with a practiced, firm grip. "Good to finally meet you, sweetie. Your mother talks about you all the time." I poured their coffee. Frank watched silently from behind the counter. For 3 minutes, she cried real tears, missing her father, heartbroken she wasn't there at the end, wanting to reconnect. Then Richard leaned in. "Sweetheart, your mother just wants what's fair. $11 million is a lot for someone your age to handle alone." I set my mug down. My voice stayed calm. "The will is clear. Grandpa's attorney already reviewed everything." Richard's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. He scanned the chipped counter, the vinyl booths, the tip jar. He was calculating the gap between my visible life and the fortune I now controlled. Diane reached for my hand. I let her take it, but didn't squeeze back. They left without the answer they wanted. That was only the beginning. Over the next weeks, the pressure escalated. Daily calls, texts about family healing, subtle hints that a waitress couldn't possibly manage commercial real estate or investment portfolios. Richard started casually mentioning high-powered attorneys who specialized in will contests. I listened. I documented every call. I said very little. What they didn't know was that I had spent 6 years as a JAG officer prosecuting fraud cases for the United States Army. I knew how to build an airtight case. I knew how to wait. And I knew exactly how greedy people slip up when they think they're dealing with someone weak. 3 months later, they filed to contest the will. Claim, undue influence. Claim, I had isolated Grandpa in his final years. Claim, I was unfit, emotionally unstable, financially inexperienced, just a waitress who manipulated a sick old man. The hearing date was set. My mother's attorney paraded witnesses who barely knew Grandpa. They painted Diane as the devoted daughter kept away by family interference. The day of the hearing, the gallery was packed. My mother wore a modest black dress, dabbing her eyes. Richard sat behind her, arms crossed, confident. Her attorney held up the photo from Frank's cafe. Your Honor, this is who controls $11 million, a part-time waitress with no formal financial training. Laughter rippled through the room. My mother looked straight at me with something like triumph. My turn. I stood up in my simple navy suit, the one I'd worn in military courtrooms. No flash, just quiet confidence. I submitted the first binder. Medical records showing I was Grandpa's primary caregiver. Phone logs proving my mother's near-total absence for 20 years. The handwritten letter from the cedar box. But I wasn't done. I played the first recording. Diane's voice clear as day from a phone call 2 months earlier. Karen, be reasonable. You owe me this. I gave birth to you. That money should have been mine years ago. The gallery went still. Then the second recording. Richard, this time, caught on a voicemail. Look, the old man's gone. She's a nobody. We push hard enough, she'll fold. 11 million split 3 ways is still life-changing. Gasps. My mother's face drained of color. Richard shifted uncomfortably. I walked to the front of the courtroom and looked directly at my mother. My voice didn't shake. You called me just a waitress. You held up that photo like it was proof I was worthless. But while you were chasing faster lives and newer husbands, I was here, learning from him. You called me just a waitress. You held up that photo like it was proof I was worthless. But while you were chasing faster lives and newer husbands, I was here, learning from him, caring for him, earning his trust the only way that matters, by showing up. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'm not just a waitress. I am Captain Karen Myers, United States Army JAG Corps. For 6 years, I prosecuted financial fraud and estate disputes. I know exactly what this estate requires, and I have the team in place to manage it responsibly, exactly as my grandfather asked. The courtroom fell into absolute silence. You could hear the air conditioning hum. My mother's attorney tried to recover, stammering about technicalities. The judge cut him off. Ms. Myers has presented compelling evidence of long-term abandonment, clear testamentary intent, and her own professional qualifications. The petition to contest is denied. The will stands as written. Gavel. My mother stood up too fast. Her chair scraped loudly. For the first time in my life, I saw real panic in her eyes. Richard grabbed her arm, whispering furiously. The gallery murmured, some in shock, others nodding in quiet approval. As I gathered my files, my mother approached the barrier. Her voice cracked. Karen, sweetheart, this isn't what I wanted. I looked at her. Really looked. The expensive coat, the perfect makeup, the fear behind the mask. No, Mom, this is exactly what you wanted. You just didn't think I was strong enough to stop you. I walked out without another word. The cedar box letter felt warm in my briefcase. The days after the hearing were a whirlwind. Local news picked up the story. Local veterans' will upheld. Granddaughter prevails over long-absent mother. Old neighbors reached out. Frank put up a proud of our Karen sign in the cafe window. Richard tried one last desperate move, calling my cell, offering mediation, and hinting at public embarrassment if I didn't share. I forwarded the recording to my attorney and blocked the number. Diane sent a long email full of rewritten history and guilt trips. I printed it, added it to the evidence file, and never replied. 6 months later, I sold 2 of the rental properties and used the proceeds to create the Walter Myers Scholarship Fund for local kids who lose a parent young, especially those who step up as caregivers. The first recipient was a quiet 16-year-old girl who reminded me of myself. I still work shifts at Frank's sometimes, not because I need the money, but because those booths and that coffee smell like home, like loyalty, like the values Grandpa taught me. My mother reached out one final time through a mutual relative. She wanted to talk. I agreed to one meeting in the same cafe. She arrived alone this time. No Kashmir, no Richard. She looked smaller. She cried again. Real tears, maybe. She said she regretted everything, that she should have been there, that she was proud of the woman I'd become. I listened quietly, the way Grandpa would have. Then I slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a cashier's check for the original $200,000 bequest, untouched. Grandpa wanted you to have this. Not because you earned it, but because he still loved the daughter he remembered. Take it, and don't come back asking for more. She stared at the check for a long moment. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. For once, she had nothing to say. I don't hate her. Hate takes energy I'd rather spend on the life Grandpa trusted me to build, but I also don't owe her a relationship. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to teach you how strong you had to become to cross the river alone. The quietest person in the room really does know the most. That courtroom moment, when my mother's smirk vanished and the laughter died in her throat, still plays in my mind sometimes. Not with cruelty, but with deep satisfaction. The kind of justice that feels like finally setting down a weight you carried for decades. She tried to humiliate me with the very job that showed my love. Instead, that waitress photo became the symbol of everything she could never take away. To everyone watching who's dealing with family betrayal, greed, or feeling invisible, stay quiet when you need to. Document everything. Build your strength in the shadows. And when the moment comes, stand up. The truth has a way of speaking louder than any expensive attorney. Karma doesn't always come fast, but when it does, it hits exactly where it hurts most. If this story gave you chills, that rush of vindication, or even a few tears, hit the like button. It helps more than you know. Subscribe for more real revenge stories, family betrayals, and quiet triumphs. Comment below, what's the most shocking thing a family member ever tried to take from you? I read every single one. Thank you for spending this time with me and Karen's story. You're part of a community that believes in boundaries, justice, and protecting what matters.